Sandman Universe, Nightmare Country issue 1. Connor read this.
As did I.
Oh, Matt read this too.
I don't know anything about the Sandman except about Dream and Death, right? I know about Morpheus.
Turns out that's kind of all you really need for this issue.
Yeah, right. And I know about Death being, this emo, goth chick.
Yep.
Because we say emo today. And that's really it. Like, I've been told I need to read it. And then I got a message from Connor saying, he's like, hey, you just need to know about the Corinthian, which he told me about last week, right? When we were going over. But this is mostly a standalone tie-in. Like, I'm sure if you are up to date with all the Sandman dreaming stuff, it's even better. But being someone that's not at all, this just came out like a tie-in horror book.
Yeah, there's definitely, like, it's in that world. It has the Corinthian. There's a little bit explaining the Corinthian's backstory and his creation by Dream in a wonderful sequence by Paquette.
Yeah, Paquette. Yep.
But other than that, it basically just feels like a standalone tie-in horror book.
It gave me vibes.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it gave me vibes of the new Candyman, and it might just be because the art.
Yeah, is that the bit in the mirror that the guy you're thinking that?
Yeah. So there's parts that they're going over our main, who I'm assuming is our main character,
Flynn.
Flynn, yeah, her art and how it puts people off. And I was just, this whole thing about dreams and nightmares, and I was just getting vibes of the new Candyman. Which again, horror might as well, right? But yeah, man, Tynan just, between this and Department of Truth, this dude has a lot to say about concepts and abstracts.
He's also tackling the exact same idea in Something Is Killing the Children.
Okay, so like in Department of Truth, it is what is reality, and your own beliefs form that reality. And here it's nightmares, like what makes a nightmare, because not everybody is fearful of the same stuff, but everyone can relate to a nightmare. And so here we get a character who apparently is doing artistic renditions of the Corinthian, but doesn't realize who the Corinthian is.
She's just like, oh, it's the smiling man. It's someone she sees in her nightmares, and it turns out there's a bunch of them that see him, because there's a point where he shows up later.
Yep.
Obviously with the shades on, so
right, so you can't see
can't see the eyes. So we look
his mouth eyes.
His mouth eyes, yes. So she's like, oh, are you one of the ones that sees him too? So clearly there's a small little community of them.
And we get introduced to her at a bar talking about her dreams and how her dreams or her nightmares then, now with distance, almost feel just like her processing things. So, one in particular what she had in high school was her middle school bullies finally accepting her.
Yeah, they apologized to her.
And
it's just like, it was stupid. Why'd I even dream that?
Right. And she's like, well, if that is what makes it, how I read this was, if that makes it unpleasant, is that a nightmare? Or does a nightmare have to be something that's fear? What's the Corinthian's game here?
And the Corinthian himself, because we don't spend a ton of time following him. He has a short sequence. Manages to be creepy as shit. He stalks his victims and uses their dreams or their nightmares to fuel his passions. Where he has one of them using the skin of her bookbinder's father turned into a notebook.
Yeah, so he keeps all of his stuff in this notebook that came from a bookbinder's nightmare, but the book was made from her father's skin. And he goes, well, not actually her father, but her father in the dream. So it's the
dream version, yeah.
Right.
And it talks about, there's a guy who lives in the forest. He's like in his 80s. He's terrified of mirrors, and he won't let them in his house because when he was like, I don't know, 14 or whatever it was, he had a nightmare where he woke up, in the nightmare, he looked in the mirror and he was essentially the Corinthian. He had the mouth eyes, and in curiosity tried to touch them, and his eyes just started eating his fingers, and he couldn't stop. and that fear just stayed. So
So
that every time he sees a mirror now, he's scared of what he'll see.
And now he's living with his daughter and her husband who won't indulge his superstitions, and so he just looks terrified.
Yeah.
So
and
again,
you just see the Corinthian outside, just looking in the window. You just see the silhouette and like the eyes, or like the reflection of the glasses. Just him jotting down in his notebook what's happening.
Yeah. And so again, with Tynan and his whole idea of fear from Fear State, I feel like again it's him tackling these abstractions, and I don't feel there's another writer, at least that I'm aware of. I'm probably way off, that's doing similar stuff outside of Ram V with ideas. Right?
I mean, it's in a different way, but Gillen's kind of doing the same thing in Once and Future.
Yeah,
he's kind of taking a more storytelling approach.
Yeah, with folklore and whatnot, and how it's as real as we make it, and so it's fun to see that thread through all of his stuff. And I'm glad I did read this because it's very creepy. The artist, not Paquette. Do you have that up in front of you?
Esterin, I believe.
Yeah.
Lissandro Esterin. Yeah.
It's very dreamlike in the reality, and yet when we get to the dreaming, it's very clean lines from Paquette and fantastical. So I was reading this at the doctor's office this morning. My wife's over my shoulder. She goes, "Oh, is that a Storybook Castle?" Right?
And then you flick through a few pages and you see all the demented drawings of the Corinthian.
Yeah, and it's like, no, but that's what it's meant to represent. And I'm explaining the dreaming where it's everything, it can be anything to anybody, because it's the dreamscape and whatnot. And so just the way that that's handled. But we get to the end of the book and we get introduced to Mr. Agony and Mr. Ecstasy. And like I've never seen Hellraiser, but these two characters come off as very Hellraiser to me.
They do have that vibe to it, yeah.
Yeah. So Mr. Agony is wearing like what looks like a gimp mask, half zipped, and he's huge, built like Lurch from Addams Family.
And he's just got his nose sticking out. Yeah.
And Mr. Ecstasy looks like he has his face being pulled back.
Kind of looks like during when they did the Joker having the stitched on face.
Uh-huh.
It's a similar look to that.
And so his face is pulled up, his eyes, his nose, like everything's coming to an angle.
It is literally like it's a skin mask, and it's being hooked at the back and then hooked at various points to keep it in place.
Hooked is the right way. So they're talking about visiting these people who had the dare to have dreams and be aspirational, because if anything in this life, it's going to beat you down. They have to understand the reality of this, and that dreams will kill you. And as they murder this guy that's trying to get away, he has knives stabbed in his legs.
Crawling along a pier. And it is crawling, because like I say, he's got knives all in him. He's just blood everywhere. And
Mr. Ecstasy smashes his head and, leaves him there and says, we have to go to Brooklyn to visit, Flynn.
Yep.
And there's this other character that reminded me of in the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark movie, the hug lady. She's this big, huge, being that appears to Flynn early in the book, but she's overlooking. Who I'm assuming is a she.
Yeah, no, it's got feminine features for sure.
Yeah,
it's kind of Clayfacey, kind of like that kind of mud monster. But tongues coming out of the eyes instead of teeth.
Right, similar to the Corinthian. So I'm wondering if these people, I don't feel like they work for the Corinthian, right? I don't
think so either. I think they're other agents. Although, I mean, if anything, I would say this is more likely to be a agent of the Corinthian, or maybe even an abstract form the Corinthian has taken, or sometimes appears this way.
Right. And so, because just the way that we see the Corinthian when he goes to visit Flynn, he has a almost Constantine level of charisma.
Yes.
We're like, who is this prick? Why do I kind of like him, but I shouldn't,
That's exactly what the Corinthian's like, yeah.
Right. So, and I feel like that went, and this is the complete opposite. I don't want to see this. In fact, my iPad got stuck on that final page because the stupid app doesn't want to work on my stupid iPad.
It's terrible,
and
yeah.
It's going to haunt me. It's going to haunt me with the face and the tongues.
A relatively simple image, because it's not like a super detailed, crazy creation. It is kind of like this mud monster, like I say, but it's just got enough features that it looks unsettling, and like I say, the tongues coming out of the eye holes, and and it's not like just a human tongue. It's like a long kind of reptilian looking tongue almost.
And that makes me wonder if it is a form of the Corinthian. It's almost the version that's gotten too, because it's so engorged, right?
Yeah,
it's
I wonder
so
if it's like a splintered element of the Corinthian.
Right, that
it's, this explains in here, the Corinthian was created by Dream to be a mirror to humanity, and kind of being like, no, this is why, this is what you're scared of. It's designed to be a nightmare to haunt you because it feels real.
Well, and that's right, and that's existence. Like you got to have that fear. Fear is what drives, right? And like courage isn't the absence of fear; it's able to look fear in the face and still continue to go on. And so that's where it feels like, again, that charisma of it's like why people like watching scary movies, right? You get a charge, or riding roller coasters, doing something dangerous. It's okay to have fear, but it almost feels like this being is just fully feeds on fear, and it's a complete corruption of the Corinthians' mission. And so that's why I'm wondering if the faces, and because those images sure had the teeth that Flynn was drawing, but it didn't feel like it was the Corinthians' work, because he was confused, right? Because he visits the person that Flynn hooks up with, right? He visits and the Corinthian talks to.
Yes.
And has almost like a familiarity with, so he clearly is new to all this too. So that's why I'm wondering if this is, as this is his shadow form, like, does the shadow form have a shadow form? Is this something that's gotten corrupted in him because of, knowing Tynan, because of the ongoings of the modern world?
We should point out when he visits the guy, it's in a dream, yeah.
Right. Not like when he visits Flynn, which is in the real world.
Which is in real life, yeah.
Right.
And in the dream, this is while he's staying at Flynn's apartment, is asleep there in this room with all these creepy paintings.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not the Corinthian. It feels like it's supposed to represent the Corinthian, but maybe, like I say, it is this other being. Yeah.
Yep. So, but yeah. So no, I'm glad I read this. I'm glad you told me to make time for it. Maybe reading this at the doctor's office wasn't the best idea with people.
That's possibly fair.
Being around.
I don't think it's worth stressing to people that even if you haven't read Sandman, definitely if you haven't read the latest like Sandman universe round of stuff, this, I mean, admittedly, okay, I can't vouch for the whole series. It could change later, but right now, this is incredibly accessible. Like this could, barring a few elements, this could just be a completely original IP.
But yeah, you ready to rate this?
Yeah, no, I love this. It's like a 9.
Yeah, how many is an 8.5?